Sacrifice me.
The semifinals continue. Man, I am so glad we're not going to have a 3-0 tonight. That's what I was afraid of. And it's not going to happen, so I'm happy. Yes, even if Stork had 3-0'd, I would be kind of sad, because in the back of my head, I'd be thinking, well, Jaedong could have done much better than that. And the opposite is true. If Jaedong would have 3-0'd Stork, I'd be thinking, well, Stork could have done much better. But no more coulda, woulda, shoulda. This is going to be a series with a very angry Jaedong over there. And Stork's kind of aloof. Kind of messing with his keyboard, trying to pick some Doritos that he was eating out of his keyboard. I'm Stork. I'm Jaedong. So yes, we're moving on to the third set. The semifinals is a very interesting spot because if you read interviews with players, they're always saying, I want to get to the semifinals. I want to get to the semifinals. And they almost never mention, I want to work all the way to the finals this season. Their goal is almost always to get to the semifinals because it puts you in such a good position. It's hard to get rid of you once you get to a semifinals of an OSL. Because all four of these guys will have a vacation and then be automatically seeded into the next round of 16. And that's why this is such a prestigious little goal. So that's why you'll see most players say, I want to get to the semis. After that, who knows? Except up at the 10 o'clock position in orange is Jaedong. Down at the 5 o'clock position in white, I think, is Stork. Very angry-looking Jaedong. Now that he's behind, as I mentioned in a previous game, now he's going to start to play a little bit more desperate than he has before. I mean, that was an interesting build from him in the last game, but it was kind of un-Jaedong-like. You don't really see Jaedong go for that kind of build, and now he's going to play much more aggressive, I think, against Stork. But Stork, as I've said, is much harder to predict. I've watched and commentated on a lot of Stork games, and still I can't think of a certain style he has. He doesn't really have a style in any of his matchups because even if you think he has a style, he'll come back later with another kind of build. I mean, he's used Arbiters against Zerg, for God's sake. That is not a style. That is just craziness. And Jaedong, the observers are pointing out that Jaedong is going for a 9-pull. So as I've said, he is already aggressive, already becoming more aggressive and starting to feel the heat. And I really, really hope that Stork has noticed this in Jaedong's play too. It might be a bit difficult for pro gamers to study other pro gamers just because they have to do so much practice themselves. And it's hard to get a hold of replays unless it's one of your teammates or a friend has got a replay against Jaedong. Maybe he's friends with Free or something, or another Protoss player is saying, well, he can give me a replay of Jaedong so I can study his timings, see how he plays. But you can't get a sense of how Jaedong plays in a best of 5 unless you watch the actual video of that. And I'm not sure if Stork has done that. I hope he has, because Jaedong is starting to prove himself to be pretty predictable in a best of 5. I think Flash might be able to attest to that, although he's a lot less predictable in versus Terran. But Stork is in there. He sees everything that's happening. His pupils are going to dilate, and he's going to throw down some cannons and probably have to pull off a few probes. I think this cannon will warp in. These two cannons will warp in just in time. But he's going to have to pull off probes anyway, just to make sure that the Zerglings can't run by. This is going to be a little bit tight. Teensy bit tight, I think. So the Zerglings are on the way. Jaedong is going to try to run by, and it's going to be very difficult to do that, so he might actually back off. Because he does have an Overlord going in, too, to see the amount of cannons at the front. That Overlord timing might barely be in time to see the cannon, but Jaedong is going to see that cannon, and actually the cannons are going to warp in way before the Zerglings get there, so never mind. I thought it was going to be a bit tighter than that, but I kind of underestimated the rush distance on this map. So Jaedong's not going to be able to get anything done here. He goes in here, he sees the cannon, loses his Zergling at the front. No big deal to lose his Zergling this early, because he gets the full scout on the amount of cannons at the front, so he has that information. And Stork is up here trying to block the hatchery. He's one step ahead of Jaedong, just kind of stopping that probe right at the exact spot where it would throw down a hatchery. So this drone is going to be so annoyed. It is going to fire so many little spines out of anger and frustration, but the Zerglings are on the way, so it won't be too much longer before Jaedong can throw down this base. But some very nice base denying from Stork. Stork is trying to take down another drone, but being a bit too risky that time. That was a smart plan from him, though, to draw Jaedong's attention over at the 2 o'clock and try to take down a drone over at the inside of Jaedong's main again. Since it worked so well in the last set, Stork does that way more than other Protoss players, I've noticed. And maybe it's because his probe control is so good, but he's taken down so many drones, early drones, against Zerg players, it's ridiculous. But alright, a pretty nice blockade at the front from Stork. He has a couple cannons there just in case Jaedong should try to be overzealous like he was in the first game. But it looks like Jaedong is switching into another standard type of build from a very aggressive opening. Attempted aggressive opening anyway. Wanted to punish Stork if he'd gone for a 12 Nexus again, which would be pretty much suicidal on a 2-player map, but it's pretty much suicidal on a 4-player map against a player like Jaedong, but I've talked about that before. Nexus on the way from Stork. He is going for standard stuff too. And I'm not exactly sure what the stats are for this map. I was looking them up before, but I already forget the percentages. I'm pretty sure that this does favor Protoss over Zerg, though, which is pretty rare for a map these days. But I'm pretty sure it does. Stargate on the way for Stork, and he's upgrading +1, so he is going to go out probably with about 5 or 6 Zealots later for a +1 attack. Try to make Jaedong throw down Sunkens at his 2 o'clock. But this is pretty early on. Stork almost taking down a Zergling. One more shot and that Zergling would have died. Of course, +1, what the +1 gives you against Zerglings is you can 2-shot Zerglings instead of the 3-shot from the Zealots. That is why it's such an important upgrade. And then 2-shot those pesky little Zerglings to their death.